Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to talk about how to craft and ground an ideal scenario. Now, this is something where many assignments in our professional degree programs ask you to not only write up a case study, but to also create a set of factors, descriptions, or other materials that will describe an ideal that you are working to realize. And this isn't just an abstract thought exercise. In many of our programs, it's also a distinct task that you do on your way to advocating for more resources, whether it's a grant application, a budget line allocation, or even people's time, to present an ideal and to explain why this is desirable, and then from that change the conversation to should this happen, to how can we make this happen, or how can we help? Before we dive into that, let's talk about a little bit related to the Writing Center and what the Writing Center has to offer besides webinars such as this. We work with students at all stages in the writing process, including through resources like templates and sample papers that we've created and make available, through offering one-on-one writing consultations. For example, to sign up for an asynchronous appointment, meaning you reserve a time, upload a copy of your paper. Before that time arrives, we look at it and send you feedback, generally within 24 hours. Or real-time appointments, which could be via phone or Zoom. We also have office hours that you can drop in virtually, and you can send us questions to onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. And if it's something short like, oh, is this formatted correctly? We can certainly respond quickly to that. And if it's something that requires more time, more appropriate for an appointment, we'll let you know and help you with the scheduling. So another thing I want to call your attention to is that we have a program-specific webinar guide, which is specifically relevant because this assignment that we're looking at today ties into the previous week's assignment, and we have a webinar that deals with that previous assignment. So let's take a moment and navigate to the Writing Webinars page, and I'll show you exactly how this will work. Now here you see the webinar page, and at the top we have some instructions and then a calendar view where you can see the upcoming webinars. And at the very bottom you'll find this alphabetical list of the different webinars that we have. In the middle is where I'd like you to focus your attention, where we have this tabbed sorted guide. So let's say you are taking Leadership 751, and you can select Lead, EdD. Scroll down, you'll notice that this is sorted by the course numbers, so 711 here, 714. Keep going until we get to Leadership 751 and see, oh, we have a tie-in for the Week 1 assignment, for the Week 2 assignment, the Week 5 assignment, and as soon as I upload this video and update the page, for the Week 6 assignment as well. So this is a way of looking for timely resources for the task that you're having in front of you, and whether that's you've just submitted your last paper and you want to think ahead or organize your thoughts, or you have more discrete questions, I do recommend checking to see if we have a tie-in. Speaking of tie-ins, let's look at the course from which our tie-in assignment is drawn. So the course is Leadership 751. It's in the EdD program, the Doctorate of Education Leadership. And we have this course, Positive Organizational Culture, from which we derive the Week 6 assignment number 1 that we'll be looking at today. The instructions specify, in this assignment you will give a presentation on how you create, embed, and transmit a positive culture for the dream company you described in Module 5. That would be the Week 5 assignment 1 that I mentioned we have a webinar tie-in. Prepare a presentation of no more than 16 slides that you will narrate. First, briefly reintroduce the organization you created in Module 5 in no more than 1 slide, and then address how you create, embed, and transmit positive culture. Be specific. And for this, you want to, it tells you, use your own ideas and back them up with research. You can also use others' ideas, following a model of what other people have done in other organizations, like following what leaders at SWA or Lululemon or Disney have done. By the way, if you know if it's Lululemon or Lululemon, please let me know, because I hear people say it both ways and I have no idea. And we have some additional notes here. If you are following an approach from a company that you found in your research and you're reading for the course, make sure that you are stating what you're doing based on their experience. So identify the specific model and why you're following it. Feel free to research other companies' cultures and use that information in the presentation. Just make sure to cite your sources. And these may not all be scholarly. Now, number 3 is where things get especially interesting. Address the processes, procedures, systems, and/or policies that facilitate a positive culture. Describe at least 5 of the following that are relevant to how you create, embed, and transmit them. You may address more, but you're not required to. And then we see here we have a lot to choose from. So I've highlighted 5. It's 10. We have 15 to choose from, and we need to describe at least 5. So most of these are probably not going to be included for reasons of time and focus. And then you have a couple options for delivery. You can record a screencast or a video of this, giving it standing in front of the camera. That's fine. Either is doable, but we should have no more than 16 slides, excluding title and reference, and should go no more than 22 minutes. Now, let's talk about what this means in practice. First, you shouldn't be entirely reinventing the wheel. You have an introduction that you wrote for the previous assignment, and so that can be used here as well. But it should be adapted to the fact that you're making a presentation. There is the visual medium. We also have a discussion about transmitting the culture, and then the specific things that you would be doing. Now, let's break those into different tasks after we take a look at the rubric. So, first and easiest is introducing the dream company. And then we have most of the points, 13 out of 16, going to, did you do the rest of the things there? We're talking mainly about number 2 and number 3 here. Then we see that another 1 out of 16 is, have you proofread your presentation so it doesn't have typos, and is it of no more than 16 slides, again excluding title and the reference slide. Now, keep this one in mind. Notes pages are included. So the notes pages are something that should be used here. It's mentioned multiple times here. It's included in the rubric, so make sure you've got that down there. Now, because some of this is stuff that you have been working on for your previous paper, is material you can use, especially if you have some of this in bullet fashion already that you can transplant into the deck. So let us look at how you might do some of these tasks. Now I have here the outline that I was creating as part of the previous week's assignment. And some of this material you'll see has been expanded into prose paragraphs, and some of it is more in bulleted form. And one of the hallmarks of a good presentation where you are using slides is that you strike a balance of presenting information visually so that you can focus on certain details in the verbal part of the presentation. So let's look at how I might distill this into introducing the organization, taking reference also to what this is telling us about how we should be introducing the organization. No more than 1 slide. Okay, so let's fire up PowerPoint. Now, you're certainly not required to pick a design, but a lot of people find that their thoughts are shaped when they're using something a little bit more tangible. So I'm going to go up to design here, and I'm going to pick a template to ground my presentation. And you'll see that the designer thing is making some suggestions here. That's just for changing slides individually. And I think, that will help grounded a little bit. So no problem, just make sure that these don't become distracting. All right, so this slide is going to be about the organization. Now, I can resize this, certainly, to get a little bit more space, but let's see what happens if I were to just copy and paste my paragraph here. That's a lot of text. That's the kind of text where it has to be so small that a lot of people won't be able to read it on a smaller screen, and it's not making the most efficient use of the space here. So what might I do? Well, might start cutting that down. 501c3, well, let me just change that. Nonprofit, based in Abilene, Texas, serving the surrounding area. I can say that no problem if need be, but for our purposes, we're cutting this down to the essentials. Now, this also leads you to look at ways that you might be potentially slipping this down. So more than, I can just change that to a greater sign. Now, if I really have to have this information here, then one of the things I might consider doing is changing this to a 2-column layout. And there are a couple different ways you could do it. One is to use the to content here. I've already made some adjustments here though, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, line them up, and then paste in the rest of my text. Say OK, and strong. And one of the ways to sort the information is to look at how it relates hierarchically. Stable and growing donor base, 6 months of operating reserves. That's information that is a subset of explaining strong financial health. And then this, I can say, okay, that's a goal. And rather than to turn the organization into, I can just say become. And so we are slimming this down so we can look at this and say, okay, what's our hierarchy? Okay, this is actually top level. We don't really need organization in there. We can take that out. And so now we have information that summarizes the key bits to know what we're talking about. Am I going to read every one of these things? No. The slide is there to supplement the presentation, and so we can put things there so that we don't have to talk about them. Now, if I'm going to be discussing this here, probably we're going to say something like, oh yes, so Abilene Opera Theater is a nonprofit organization based in Abilene, Texas. It presents performing arts and incubates artists. We present performances 50 weeks out of the year, do more than $3 million of economic stimulation. The organization is in strong financial health, and we are looking to become a Lortz Theater with a 10-year plan for that. Overall, the organization is a treasured community resource. We attract a wide and diverse demographic through every metric that we have examined. Now, if you are comparing what I just said with what we have on the slides, there are some details that I've left out and some things that I expanded on, and that's great because it rewards people looking at the slides so they get the complementary information. Like when I said strong financial health, they were able to get these details as well. And so that makes them more active parsers of the information that they're receiving, because what they read, they can connect with what they are hearing. And that's good. That helps keep your audience from falling asleep, and it makes a more efficient use of the time. Now, what I would recommend doing, if you are using PowerPoint for this, go ahead and create a bunch of blank slides so that you know that what your limit is. So the instructions say it should be no more than 16 slides, discounting the title and references. So that will give us 18 total. And I'm going to put the references slide here. We've got our title slide at the beginning. So this is the maximum space that we have to play with. Now, if you're curious, it took a little bit over a minute to do the slide here that you see. And that's roughly the time that you're going to have for the others. 1 to 2 minutes per slide is a good balance. And generally, you won't want to try and cram more information than that onto a slide. It's a way of keeping the user's focus and not abusing it. So, as you go through, you can go back to the outline for some of these, but also look at what is it asking you to do. And some people will just paste all these instructions to a Word document and start working from there. You can do that. I think that I'm going to go ahead and model taking part of this list to build out that slide deck and say, okay, let's start with the leadership qualities because I think that has a major trickle-down impact. And I'm going to leave some other placeholders here. So let's say that we have created, embed, and transmitting a positive culture. All right, so let's change these into active form. Creating, embedding, and transmitting a positive culture. And probably there'll be a couple slides on that. So I'm going to go ahead and leave 2 more, actually let's say 3 more open right now. And okay. Now we're talking about facilitating a positive culture. And this is a good point to have a summary slide. If you're going to be discussing 5 specific things, why not list them here so the reader knows what is coming? And so I'm going to say, let's go with leadership qualities and behaviors as one. Let's go with organizational structure. Let's go with job design, compensation, benefits. Let's go with recognition and appreciation. And I think talking about mistakes. And you know what? We're going to add 1 more here because you can do more than 5. But I think that I would have a more rounded presentation and a more rounded organization if we specifically spent some time on employee development as well. Now, once you have your list, it's a good thing to look at what the most logical order for you is. And for me, I look at this and I say, okay, organizational structure for me is the kind of thing that will then determine what our essential leadership qualities and behaviors are. Because if you have more of a flat structure versus a more affiliated tree one, that will change things a lot. Also think that employee development, for me, and this ideal organization, is more overarching thing, for which discussing these other things follows naturally. Now, whether you end with mistakes or have it in the middle, that's a subjective thing. Some people might say, well, it would be a low note to end on the mistakes. That doesn't bother me. So, because we're going to discuss them in a particular order, I'm going to change this to a numbered list. And then you'd want to discuss them in this specific order. So, all right. Organizational structure, leadership qualities and behaviors, employee development, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the opportunities, if you are creating a set of blank slides to start with, is that if you decide that something needs more discussion, let's say the mistakes part, I decide I want to present a case study to illustrate my point and to be able to really ground why I'm doing this with the reference to the literature. And so I can just add that heading here. But what if I was in wanting to do a case study here as well? Well, I can take one of these blank slides and just drag it up here. And then I know that I'm not exceeding my slide count because I just rearranged rather than inserted a new slide. I know what the maximum I'm dealing with is, and this is how I keep from overspending those slides. All right, going back to our list here. So do remember that we want to be discussing how these things will specifically facilitate a positive culture. So don't just talk about this abstract. How will they facilitate a positive culture in your real or imagined organization? So some of that might be done through role play, some of that might be done through case study, some of it might be done with just explaining, okay, so-and-so recommends doing this, so we're doing this, or we're following this example in doing that other thing. So for leadership qualities and behaviors, say, you might have something like, leaders and aspiring leaders receive ongoing emotional intelligence training, for example, and have a list of different things that you are going to have to discuss, to present. And you can expand this as you go. You don't need to have them all in mind when you start outlining or start putting these slides in. But as you go back through the reading, if you have an idea of at least some of those that you've selected, you will be able to then add specific references to ground those and policies, practices, etc. coming from that. And so by going through this process, we are able to shape the presentation in advance according to the parameters given for us, so that you're not taking up too much time, not taking up too many slides, and that you are covering all the things that you need. That's probably a good pausing point for now, but if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu to sign up for an appointment. And yes, you can get feedback on your slide deck, or visit the Online Writing Center website for access to templates, to video recordings, explanations on different topics, and other resources. Have a good day.